Well, hello, everybody. This is Q&A with B&A. Well, who is B&A? I am the B part of that, Brian Carso. I'm an associate professor of history and government at Misericordia University. And I am joined by Alan Austin, who's a professor of history and government at Misericordia. And we've got three of our history alums who are here to talk with us, Nate, Sarah, and Allison. And we're delighted to have them. And Dr. Austin, Alan, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. First, let me just echo Brian and saying we really do appreciate you being here. And that, of course, we see this as only the first in a long series of Q&As with B&A. This is just the beginning. So if we had the opportunity to be face-to-face with prospective students, one of the things we'd really like to have you all talk about a little bit today is what your experience was like as a history major at Misericordia, like particularly great moments in a classroom or the day-to-day life. Just if you were given the opportunity to talk about what does it mean to be a history major at Misericordia, what would you talk about?
Well, we're off to a good start.
I wasn't sure who to lead off with, so
I feel like Nate's leaning into the screen, but not.
I was about to I just don't want to talk over others, so I have a bad habit of doing that.
We'll let Nate go first on this one, and then we can trade off the lead down the road.
Yeah.
Well, I think the day-to-day experience of being a history major at Misericordia is a little about discovery in and of itself. It's the strengths that I found from the history department were always just a variety of interesting things to learn and discuss, particularly about American history, pop culture, and all the way up through things like legal history, which is where I found my path. I entered not really knowing what for sure I wanted to do. I was thinking about being a history teacher, and ultimately by the time I left, I was going to law school. But it was the strength of the classes and the offering that allowed me to go explore a little bit about what I was passionate about what particularly interested me, while still having some things that I particularly enjoyed. I particularly chose to be a history major because I enjoyed history and enjoyed learning about how we got to where we are today. And the class offerings at Misericordia really do help with that. So, I mean, immediately what comes to mind are I took a series of law seminars with Brian, and I also took a class like race and ethnicity in the graphic narrative with Alan. So it's the fact that I just got to sit there and indulge myself in any way really imaginable that I found to be one of the best parts of the Misericordia offering.
That's I mean, we should just quit right now because that's like, a famous New York City lawyer answering our questions for us, and we should,
I think that's
thank you, Nate.
Little bit of puffery, but I will take it.
Well, thank you, Nate, who, by the way, is class of 2013.
And we might mention also working at Fordham, but we didn't actually talk about what Nate's doing.
Yes. Would it be advantageous for me to give an introduction here now so that could be edited and placed wherever?
There's not going to be any editing, I think. We're stuck with what
this is
with
pure raw history. Q&A.
It's all good. This is we learn by doing, right?
At the least it's real. But yes, so then I'll just give the introduction of yes, I am a faculty services and reference librarian at Fordham Law School, and this coming spring should be a adjunct professor of law as well, teaching legal research. So yes, your Misericordia education can take you wherever you want it to.
That's awesome. And we'll come back to that in a future Q&A with B&A, but that's for down the road. Maybe Sarah wants to go next.
So to echo Nate, Misericordia, so the day-to-day life was again discovery. I did a lot of real world discovery through my internships. When I first entered Misericordia, I initially wanted to go into politics and work as a policy advisor or do legislative advising, because that's where I was at the time. But then through a series of internships that just happened, the opportunity was there, so I took it, and I ended up falling in love with the museum field. And because of my classes at Misericordia, with all my different research with all the different research papers I had to write, all of kind of all of the presentations I had to give, it really prepared me for my current position at Eckley, because now I work with the public and I have to do constant research and do presentations on different topics, especially that are relating to the anthracite field at the moment.
Very cool. And you did, by the way, a much better job than Nate of integrating who you are with your conversation about so he might be the high-priced New York City lawyer, but I feel like Sarah's has taken the lead.
Well, she's about educating the public about history and museum work. Sarah, we did a thing just a couple weeks ago. We did a webinar with, we had 4 museum professionals come on, like the Hollywood Squares thing on a Monday night, and talk to them about museums. We had the director of the Shelburne Museum in Vermont and the president and CEO of the Fenimore Art Museum and Farmers Museum in Cooperstown, and the head curator of exhibits at Mystic Seaport, along with a graduate student at the Institute of Fine Arts at NYU, all talking about collecting and interpreting history, which is what you're doing now, which is great work.
It was recorded too, so if anybody's interested, we can get them a copy.
I'll send you the
Okay.
links. Yeah.
So Allie?
Okay, so I always knew I wanted to be a history teacher, and at Misericordia, I was able to also see great history teachers in the practice and them doing it. So for me, I felt like I learned a lot from them, and I think some things that I even use in my classroom today, I feel like I took from them. So it's a great way that if you do want to go into secondary education, you're in small classes, which is awesome, that you can make connections, both with your education professors as well as your history professors, where you can really question things and make sure that you're understanding the material so that when you get into the field, you know exactly what you're talking about.
My parents were both public school teachers. My mom was an English teacher in a high school. My dad taught social studies and was an athletic director. And I think one of the most important things we do at Misericordia is train people to teach. The sending people like Allie off into the world, a world that needs good teachers, is really super gratifying. So in terms of stuff you stole though, do you have a particular strategy for when students show up late to class on a regular basis?
Are you trying to point at me, but I was always late to your class?
No, it's just a small joke. That was field hockey, and there was the practice and
No, it wasn't that. I had a field placement.
a field placement at 5 in the
Yeah.
morning.
No, at 8 o'clock in the morning, there's all those field placements. So if you are going in education, just don't take Dr. Austin at 8 a.m. when you have a field placement.
I'm just glad you didn't stop with "Don't take Dr. Austin." Period. That
No,
would have been.
don't
Yeah,
worry.
I mean-
I would encourage anybody to take any of the history professors.
8 a.m. is tough
Yeah.
for anybody. Even as great a professor as Dr. Austin at 8 a.m. is tough.
No. One of us teaches at 8 and one of us doesn't. I'm just going to point that out. So,
11 o'clock right here. Allie, what age group are you teaching these days?
7th and 8th grade.
Wow, that's great. I am on a school board where I live, and I know back, say, 10 years ago, there was a glut in teachers that we would get 50 people applying for a single job. That is over and gone. I was talking recently with a couple different superintendents, and there's a supply and demand thing at work. And when the supply was so huge, fewer people were being educated in secondary education, but now the supply is smaller and the demand has grown. So it's the reverse. And it's a good place to be, getting a teaching certificate and your degree and getting out there teaching. So
and I
that's
think
awesome.
worth noting that Allie stepped right out of the classroom at Misericordia and into her own classroom. So not that's the proof of what you're saying. That might be a good cliffhanger too, Brian, because we have a whole series of Q&As with B&A.
So this is
coming
the
and-
end of the first episode of Q&A with B&A.
But we'll be back soon.
We'll be back soon. We hope you enjoyed it. Till next time.
Indeed.